Hello, my name is Sinn, and today on Monday, October 26th at my house, I'll be introducing my final metals project. Originally, my project was going to be designing and constructing aluminum snowshoes. Unfortunately, the materials and construction of the snowshoes would cost as much as purchasing used snowshoes, which I will get into more later. I then went back to the drawing board and decided on a horseshoe wall rack. The reason behind the wall rack is because I have a variety of fishing poles and snowboards that are strewn in the corners of my room. The wall rack ensures that this stuff will be organized and not take up any extra space on the floor or corners of my room. Now, the significance of the horseshoes is that they provide an affordable hook that follows the rustic outdoorsy feel of my room. The whole rack is made of steel bars and steel horseshoes, which provides easy welding and cheap materials. Now I'm going to introduce the snowshoe problem. For instance, this website right here, you can tell the complexity of the snowshoes, where I need bending, I need proper welding techniques, I need proper material, and that was stuff that I just couldn't do or get. So, and up here there are some plans. For instance, here's one of 4 plans. It shows you the materials you need and maybe the process that you're going to take. Now, this one right here, it also shows you kind of a process. And if I keep going through, I'll notice that here's some plans and diagrams, and here is some more plans and diagrams, and this is stuff that I couldn't do. So I decided to go with a horseshoe wall rack instead. How I came to the conclusion of making a horseshoe wall rack was probably when I was surfing through Pinterest and I noticed this picture of a horseshoe wall rack. I then decided that I was going to make some plans of my own and decide on some proper fitting and dimensions that would fit my room. So I made some plans like these, and I also had to consider torsion and any exposure to the elements and stuff like that. So I figured out what I would need and all that sort of stuff. And after making my plans, I went to our metals room and tried to find any metal that would suit me. Unfortunately, I was unable to find any metal that would fit my project. So then I had to start buying material offline. I ended up having to go to Tractor Supply Company up in Little Falls for some horseshoes, which ended up being about $28 for the horseshoes. And the steel bar that I needed was a 1.5 inch by 1/8 inch by 8 feet. To provide a stable backdrop and connector between each of the horseshoes on each side. And then after concluding all of what materials I need, I had to find the price of everything, and the price ended up being a simple and easy and convenient $30.89. After finally finishing my plans and gathering resources, I began my project. The first thing I did was gather up my horseshoes and weld each of them together side by side with a tack weld to make sure 2 sides of 6 horses each. After the tack welds, I bent the horseshoes into a straight 180 degrees. I then made sure that the horseshoes lined up and were indeed the same length and shape. Afterwards, I applied a permanent, firmer, deeper weld over the tack welds. To make the welds look better, I ground them down with a grinder and sanded the rest to make it smooth and more appealing. Setting the horseshoes aside, I grabbed the steel flat bar and measured out 2 2-foot increments. I then cut the material as precise as I could with a horizontal bandsaw at the measurement marks. Finally, I began to weld the horseshoes to the steel bars. I had to use lots of measuring and squaring to make sure that the horseshoes were centered on the bar. I then drilled 2 holes in the top bar measured out to be equal distances from the top of the bar and from the middle of the bar. These holes would function as screw holes to mount on my wall. I then sanded any excess material from the welds off and completed my project. The first problem that I encountered during my project was obviously the snowshoes, where I had to completely improvise my idea and just kind of work around it until I figured out a better project which was the horseshoe wall rack. But then after that, the first problem that I encountered, which was, it wasn't that difficult to overcome, was once I welded the horseshoes together, they bent a little, so I had to bend them back and get them fitted so that they were level and straight and square with themselves. The worst problem that I encountered was then the third problem that I encountered, which was a midway iron problem. I placed an order to Midway Iron to get some material. Unfortunately, it never came. So to improvise, I had to grab some material from our metals room. It was too big, but it'd work anyways. So I just had to use that material, and it worked about the same. It was about the same width, but unfortunately, it was a little bit like wider in terms of this than I wanted to. I wanted it 1.5 inches, and it was about 3 inches. So I had to improvise and use that material. And the last problem that I had to overcome was when I was welding the horseshoes to the steel flat bar. I had to, the edges of the horseshoes, they're not straight, they're round. So I had to use one of those magnets from the cupboard to improvise and overcome the problem, to keep them right where I wanted them so that I could tack weld them quickly and keep them right level and square with the steel flat. And those are about the only problems that I encountered during the project, and I easily overcame all of them and got on with my project to finish it. Fortunately, the amount of work I put into the project wasn't for nothing. The project successfully completed my goal in hanging up any fishing poles and other objects on my wall instead of leaving them in the corners of my room. After going through this whole project, I believe that it went pretty well, despite the problems that occurred. However, if I could do anything different, I would probably make the rack bigger by adding more horseshoes so that I can hang even more stuff on it. On my finished project, I did not add any paint or coating to the rack because my room has a rustic feel and the dirty look of the metal follows the rustic theme. Also, it is inside, so it isn't exposed to the elements, thus rust is significantly minimized.